defending the free market, and making the moral case for capitalism. The Justin Moore Show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Justin Moore Show, where we make sense of what's going on in this crazy, insane, out of control world. Now, latest news, ladies and gentlemen, is the time has come. Finally, the Federal Reserve announced on September 20th that it was going to begin to shrink its balance sheet. Now, there's a lot of people out there, especially, libertarians. Oh, no, the Federal Reserve is never going to do it. Now, I agree. They're never fully going to shrink the balance sheet. It's not going to happen. But will they start to? Yeah, they're going to be starting in October. And now I'll get into reasons why I think Janet Yellen is doing all this and what I think is really going on behind it. But for now, let's just kind of make sure everyone's on the same page here. Okay, so the Federal Reserve, it has a balance sheet of $4.5 trillion that it's accumulated since it first began QE1 in response to the housing crisis back in 2008. And so the Federal Reserve, to bail out banks and to buy up mortgages and to keep interest rates low, to spur growth, this is all from the Keynesian perspective, they had to buy, purchase bonds, purchase mortgages. And by doing that, they did. They were successful. They kept interest rates low. We had interest rates at 0% for more than 7 years. That was unprecedented. Now, I've done shows on my podcast here talking about the effect of these low interest rates and just how historic these low interest rates are. And now what? We're at between 1% and 1.25%. That they're still historically low. I mean, they're not at zero, but still close enough. And if you figure in the inflation rate, which I would argue it's much higher than what they're stating that the actual inflation rate is, the government data. But we have negative interest rates right now. Now, a negative interest rate environment typically is good for gold. But the gold, these last, 6 years now? Since 2011, gold peaked. And it was slowly making a comeback. But then when Janet Yellen announced that, okay, we're going to begin to shrink the balance sheet by $10 billion a month starting in October. So this October, right now, in a few days here. And so while the Federal Reserve announced that, gold sold off. So it ended up dipping below $1,300. Right now it's close to $1,300. But just last week it was around, $1,340, $1,350. So, it had a little bit of a dip there in response to this. So, okay, let's just get back to what the Federal Reserve announced here. So yeah, they announced that they were going to shrink the balance sheet by starting at $10 billion a month. They're going to do that every 3 months. They're going to tick it up a notch. Then they'll go to $20 billion a month. Then they'll go to $30 billion a month. And eventually they're going to get up to a peak of $50 billion a month. That's going to be their cap. Once they're at $50 billion a month, which they're projecting that'll be in 2019, is when they'll be shrinking the balance sheet by $50 billion a month. It's not going to go higher than that. Okay, so based on what the Fed has said right there, I went and figured it out. How long is this going to take if the Federal Reserve did exactly what it said, that it announced, that it's going to do this? It would take 7.5, 8 years to shrink the balance sheet down to nothing so that it wouldn't have a balance sheet at all. Okay, so 8 years is a long time. So that's assuming, okay, let's keep this all in perspective. So right now, looking at the stock market, we're in the second longest bull market ever, okay? You look at the S&P 500 index. Since March 2009, when it hit its low, if you would have bought then, man, you'd make a lot of money because right now you'd be up more than 270% on the S&P 500 index. And so the longest bull market of all time was from 1987 to 2000. And that's where you saw a rise in the S&P to around 600%. Okay, so to become the longest bull market ever, we got some time to go. That's a 13-year bull market. Right now we're at 8 years, 9 years, a 9-year bull market. So if the Federal Reserve did exactly what it said in this little press conference, saying that, okay, we're going to keep tapering the balance sheet. Now, they're assuming with this tapering the balance sheet That's assuming things keep getting stronger, everything's strengthening. They're going to continue to do what they say. Okay, so let's assume all that's going to happen. So let's add 8 years to 9 years. So that's a 17-year bull market. So you're looking at this would have to be the longest bull market ever and beat the past record by like 4 or 5 years. Okay, so all this would have to happen. So the question is, do you think our economy is going to face a recession in the next 8 years? Okay, if you answered yes, then most likely what the Fed has said just right there is not going to happen. But now to even dig a little bit deeper into this, can the Fed really shrink its balance sheet down? Like, hasn't our economy been addicted to all this easy money floating around, these low interest rates? I mean, yeah, we still have historically low interest rates of around 1% and $4.5 trillion of funny money floating around. And also keep this in mind too, is that the Federal Reserve, so they've been buying, treasury bills, and they've also been buying mortgage debt. So basically of the 4.5 trillion, 1.8 trillion of that is mortgage debt. So when the Federal Reserve went into the mortgage market and was buying these mortgages, they were buying 1/3 of them. About 34% of mortgages are being bought by the Fed. So they have a huge impact on what's going on. So with all that said, how can the Fed, with they have such a heavy hand in the economy right now, they think they can just pull out of it? Well, now that's why the Federal Reserve, that's why Janet Yellen's arguing, hey, this is going to be boring. It's going to be like paint drying, okay? We're going to be taking off so little at a time each month that you're not even going to notice it, okay? Because they want everything to seem gradual. And one of the things I argue that the Fed's doing here, which I'm going to get into more a little bit later here, is that I think what the Federal Reserve is doing, just like what they did with interest rates, which basically a new policy tool that they created called, forward guidance. The idea that if we talk about raising interest rates in the future, like what Ben Bernanke was doing, like he got the effect of like raising interest rates, but he really didn't. He just talked about doing, oh yeah, I really want to, but okay, no, the economy, it's not quite strong enough, not kind of where we want it. Everything's transitory, yada, yada, yada. They always use the same freaking words. You pull out these FOMC statements, same stuff every time. And so that's what Bernanke started, this idea of forward guidance. And Janet Yellen continued it. But the difference here, Janet Yellen actually has raised interest rates, which Bernanke didn't do. Looking back and comparing the two Federal Reserve Chairman and Chairwoman here, Bernanke and Janet Yellen, Bernanke was much more of a dove. Janet Yellen comes across as a hawk. Now Bernanke, he's a monetarist. So monetarists, you typically, they're more Republican sort of guys. I mean, this is just looking at it from a political standpoint. Then Janet Yellen, she's a Keynesian. And for Janet Yellen as a Keynesian, here she is. She's acting more hawkish than Bernanke ever did. And I guess, and just to add to, so you guys have a more an idea of what's going on with their little plan that they have going on, is that what the Fed wants to do when they're shrinking the balance sheet by $10 billion a month, $6 billion of that is going to be treasuries, and $4 billion is going to be mortgage-backed securities. Okay, so that obviously 6 plus 4 is 10. Yeah, there we go. And then also with this $10 billion, so instead of the Fed going out and trying to sell treasuries, they're just not rolling over debt like they were before. Even though that they ended QE, their money printing scheme, QE3, they were still rolling over, and they were still essentially printing money just to maintain that 4.5 trillion balance sheet. So as bonds start to mature, so the Fed would just go buy up enough treasuries and mortgage debt as the equivalent of what's maturing in the bond market. So just to maintain, again, that $4.5 trillion balance sheet. And I made that comment on my show several times here, pointing out, hey, look, the Fed is still printing money even though they don't have QE, quantitative easing, going on. And so that's what they're doing. So now Janet Yellen's saying, hey, we're actually going to do reverse QE. As these bonds mature, we're just going to let them fall off the books. We're going to let $10 billion fall off the books every month. And then after 3 months, we're going to go to $20 billion, then $30 billion, then up to $50 billion. So that's their plan. And so now a lot of people out there, they're kind of scratching their head. They're wondering, okay, whoa, why is Janet Yellen doing this? What possibly does she have in her little brain? Because the economy is not strong. The Federal Reserve's always said the same stuff. Yeah, things look pretty strong. Jobs, we have a 4.4% unemployment rate, yada, yada, yada. But I was sitting back thinking about this. Okay, why is Janet Yellen doing this? So things I've pointed out on my show before, getting into the psyche of Janet Yellen, is that, for one, I think she's being very political. And I made the comment, remember one of my very first shows of this year in 2017, I said the Federal Reserve will probably raise interest rates twice. Okay, well, we've already had the Federal Reserve raise interest rates twice. Now remember, at the same time that I was saying this, a lot of libertarians out there and people were saying, no, the Federal Reserve, they can't raise interest rates, they're not going to, nope. But I made the point that because Donald Trump won the election, that we have a Republican in office, that Janet Yellen, she's now more giddy to raise interest rates. And now that Donald Trump has taken credit for the economy, that's given Janet Yellen kind of a backboard, kind of like, it's like bowling with the bumpers up. The bumper bowling, have you ever done that as a kid? So like, when you have the bumper bowling up, well, you don't have to worry about your ball going to the gutter. You can just chuck the ball down there. Or say if you want to practice and try to, throw the ball and try to get some side spin on it like all the professional bowlers do. You can try that because, you're not going to go in the gutter. It'll just bounce back and you'll probably still get a really good hit off the pins, But when the little bumpers are down, you got to be a little bit more concerned. It's like, okay, yeah, I can screw around trying to get side spin on the ball. I can go get one of those little pink, like super light 6-pound balls and just chuck it like 25, 30 miles an hour down the bowling lane. Maybe sometimes it bounces over into the other lane, just to, screw around, well, when you have a gutter there, it's like, well, now you just went, say you're competing with your friends, you got money on the line, you might have to buy the next round of drinks if you lose. You don't want your ball going in the gutter. Okay? Well, see, now with Janet Yellen, with Donald Trump taking credit for the economy, so if things go sideways, if things go backwards in the economy, Janet Yellen can step back, hey, look, Donald Trump's president, he took credit for it. And then also, remember one of my last episodes here, what was that, a few weeks ago, where Janet Yellen was making the comments that we'll never have another financial crisis in our lifetimes. And then she, this is kind of tying things in together. And then when Janet Yellen was at Jackson Hole, she didn't talk about monetary policy at all, which most people were stunned. Like they're expecting her to say something about interest rates. Didn't say anything. All Janet Yellen talked about at Jackson Hole was she's talking about the benefits of government regulation and how, acts like Dodd-Frank have made us stronger, have made our economy more resilient. And so what all this is set up with Janet Yellen saying that is she's pointing out, look, we have done everything we can to make things better. But now Donald Trump, he's already taken credit for the economy. If Donald Trump is successful in rolling back some of Dodd-Frank, he doesn't have to get rid of all of it, just some of it. Janet Yellen and Democrats, they'll be able to say, hey, look, hey, we had these regulations in place for a reason. We wanted to prevent another 2008 financial crisis. But now here's Republicans. They stepped in. They deregulated the economy. Now deregulation has caused the new financial crisis of 2018. So it's all set up, this whole narrative. And I did a whole show talking about just this. So all of this is tied together. Janet Yellen, she doesn't have to be so concerned about things going to crap now. Especially when she's out in February, assuming she doesn't get reappointed, which the chances of her getting reappointed aren't that good. Donald Trump wants his own guy in there. Now looking at Janet Yellen, with her announcing this program of the Fed beginning to shrink the balance sheet, $10 billion a month. So for the first 3 months, October, November, December, that's 3 months. That's $30 billion right there, right? Okay, then if after every 3 months or every quarter, it then goes up another 10 billion. So now it's at 20 billion for January and February. So that's 40 billion. So I had 40 billion plus 30 billion. So you're at $70 billion. $70 billion of a $4.5 trillion balance sheet is about 1.5% of the balance sheet has shrunk by the time Janet Yellen has left office. So 1.5%, yeah, it's pretty small. Is that going to be enough to cause a disruption in the economy in the short term? Probably not, no. But in the medium to long term, is it eventually going to upset things, especially when in about a year's time, 18 months, 2019, when the Federal Reserve is shrinking the balance sheet by $50 billion a month? Do you think that will cause some severe disruptions in the economy? Yeah. So here's a calculation I think Janet Yellen's making. So with everything I said about Donald Trump is already taking credit for the economy, Janet Yellen setting up the narrative that when the next crisis comes, it's going to be the problem of deregulation because, hey, they put in all the proper regulations to help keep our economy safe. And Janet Yellen could argue, if you just look at it from her little tenure at the Fed, things haven't gone to hell yet. So she can definitely use that as a point to argue. Okay, so with those things in her favor, and then she seems like she's being really responsible. Here she is. She's trying to shrink the balance sheet. And by it only shrinking 1.5% by the time she's out, are things really going to go to hell by then, by the time she leaves? Probably not. But will things go to hell probably shortly after she leaves? Probably yes. So now I guess to throw another curveball in here, let's say by a small chance Janet Yellen did get reappointed. For one, I think if Donald Trump asked her, I think one of two things will happen. I guess only one of two things can happen. Either she would decline, which I think there's a chance she would decline, just because she set up all this to begin with. Well, that I think she knows to some extent that things aren't as rosy as she's saying. Or two, she takes it and she reverses some of the things that she's done in terms of shrinking the balance sheet and just playing it a little more safe, just so she can survive another term, But I don't think Donald Trump will pick her. So with everything that's been said, Janet Yellen will leave, and you looking back at her record as the Federal Reserve Chairwoman, I mean, she looks like a hawk. She's raised interest rates. She's now shrinking the balance sheet that many people thought would never happen. So when a crisis comes and people look back in history, look at Janet Yellen as Federal Reserve Chairwoman, be like, hey, look, we can't blame Janet Yellen for this. She was actually being responsible. When we have massive inflation, hey, no, Janet Yellen, she was trying to avoid this. She was shrinking the balance sheet. So everything she has set up, she's protected herself. I mean, it's really hard to blame her. Now we can go back, we as Austrians out here, we'll say, hey, well, look, yeah, obviously, yeah, we need to shrink the balance sheet. Yeah, the Federal Reserve shouldn't have a balance sheet at all. I mean, there shouldn't be a Federal Reserve at all. That's what we'll say. But given things the way they are, we'd say, well, Janet Yellen should have raised interest rates a lot quicker than she did. She only raised interest rates, a few times. Raised interest rates around a whole percentage point the whole time she's at the Fed, when interest rates should be much higher than where they are right now. Those are small little critiques like that, but looking at her record overall, she's heading in the right direction. So that is what I think Janet Yellen has set up by doing this. I mean, if without thinking about it in the way I just described, I don't think a lot of what she's saying makes that much sense. Especially, the Keynesian mindset. And so I think things would be much different. Janet Yellen would have acted much differently, and she definitely would not be shrinking the balance sheet if Hillary Clinton was president. There would be a much different Janet Yellen. It's like with the movie Back to the Future, where you have Doc. Marty, we're in an alternative 1985. So when you had Doc saying that, and he's pointing, he's drawing another line down from the alternate timeline where you have Biff as, president or a CEO, whatever he is, which apparently sounds like Biff might have been actually modeled off of Donald Trump, which is bizarre, if that's true. But here we have a Janet Yellen, an alternative Janet Yellen, that veered off at the end of 2016. And so, because Donald Trump is president, she's taken a different path than she would have if we would have had a Hillary Clinton as president. Because you saw Janet Yellen prior to the election, when it looked like Hillary Clinton was going to become the next president, Janet Yellen kept pushing off, raising interest rates. No, we're still not where we want, keeping the money easy. But then ever since Donald Trump has been nominated as president, Janet Yellen quickly changed her tune. I mean, raising interest rates 2 times in just the first half of the year, and possibly a third time in December. So look, I think that's a good way to explain it, that we just have an alternative version of Janet Yellen that veered off in November of 2016. So maybe we should get Doc in here so he can put that on his little chalkboard. So that is the way I see what's going on here with the Federal Reserve. I think I kind of have a completely different take than what you hear from anyone else out there with what's going on. Just pulling in all these separate little points on the graph. It's like doing one of those little dot to dot things you did as a kid. Okay, you follow number 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And it's like, oh, I have no idea what I'm making here. Then you see you made a picture of whatever it is. So that's looking at what I see. That's what I think is going on. And from Janet Yellen's perspective, I think she's being very strategic with what she's doing. It's very smart from a woman in her position where she won't get blamed for what's to come. So I guess, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we'll just end on that note, and I'll keep you guys up to date with what's going on with the Federal Reserve and as new things develop. And I definitely don't see the Federal Reserve continuing to shrink the balance sheet, especially when Donald Trump's new man comes in there, or new woman, especially when Donald Trump is an easy interest rate guy. He's most likely going to find someone who likes that idea. But I also have been thinking about this too. Is there a chance that Donald Trump, now this would sound bizarre, but is there a chance that Donald Trump would pick, say, like a Ron Paul as the new Federal Reserve Chairman? Actually, as strange as this sounds from everything that I've just said, I think there would be a chance that Donald Trump would do that. Because think about this. Now, I know you guys have never heard this anywhere, but this is a long shot. But let me briefly explain here. Okay, Donald Trump, as president, they tried to get through healthcare reform. They couldn't even get a repeal of Obamacare. Right now, it's just like every little thing. Donald Trump can't get through anything in his agenda. He's working on tax cuts right now. He's working closely with Democrats. I mean, Donald Trump, in my last episode, I just talked about how Donald Trump seems to be moving and aligning more and more closely with the Democrats. But he's just trying to get something through. He's a businessman. He just wants... He's a guy who likes to brag. He's a winner. He wants to have a win in the column, and he can't seem to get a win. And so that's what he's doing. Anything he can. He's like desperate to get a win. So, as a way to throw people off balance, he's losing some supporters. Just to get people back on board and to show, whoa, maybe this guy is serious about draining the swamp, and just to, it's what Donald Trump does. He likes to, tweak in the media, all of this, which he's not consistent with things he says. I mean, yeah, he never really liked Janet Yellen, then he liked Janet Yellen, like he goes back and forth. But what if Donald Trump picked Ron Paul as a Federal Reserve Chairman? I think there is a small chance at that, because it's a way of looking at, wow, Donald Trump, he is serious about draining the swamp. And just having a guy with that different perspective. And Ron Paul, it's not like he's some guy who doesn't have a following. Ron Paul has his own following. He's his own personality. And so using that to his advantage, where it can seem like, yeah, he's still trying to drain the swamp. He's trying to do everything he can. Donald Trump is not a politician. He's a businessman. He wants to do what's right. But yeah, of course, Ron Paul, he's not going to be the guy to have easy money, that sort of thing. He would drastically change what's going on right now. That's for dang sure. So I don't know. Just looking at how Donald Trump's personality is, I definitely see that as a chance. And I would stand up and applaud for Donald Trump if he had Ron Paul as the Federal Reserve Chairman. That would be awesome, because that's what we need. What's going on now, the shrinking on the balance sheet, this is all stuff that needs to happen. Interest rates need to go up. Our economy is not safe right now. It's been running on funny money. All the people that benefit from this easy money today are the people who get the money first. So the people in favored businesses by the government. So those people are benefiting at the expense of real wealth generators. So we look back, oh my gosh, why is our economy not growing? It's been around 2% GDP growth for the last, 10 years. Why is that? We are getting poorer. We're destroying the wealth generators out there with this funny money, which is under the disguise of real savings. That's the destruction that money printed out of thin air does. It looks like it's real savings. And with that real savings, that's where businesses go, and that's where they engage in the structure of production, and you start producing goods. You switch from being consumers of goods to producers of goods, and you're using that money to fund other projects. Well, when that money disappears, which is what's starting to happen here as Janet Yellen shrinks the balance sheet by $10 billion a month, that is why we are getting closer and closer to this recession. It is the pin getting close to the bubble, closer to the balloon. And as this funny money disappears, we're going to find that point. That needle is going to find that balloon and it's going to pop. So we are getting closer and closer to that recession, that point that we need. We need a recession. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not heartless. I mean, anyone out there who's an Austrian understands exactly what I'm saying here. Recessions are beneficial in that you're getting rid of all the bad assets. You're getting rid of all the bad malinvestment out there. People that have been engaging in projects that the people don't actually value. Well, those are going to be the first projects that go bankrupt as the needle pricks the bubble. Just like I've done episodes talking about the car industry and how too many people have been buying new and used cars for people that can't afford them. So the auto industry has been artificially too big. There's a lot of other areas in our economy that are too big because of all this funny money. So we need to shrink the funny money in the economy. So it's the right thing to do, but the day of reckoning is fast approaching. So we got to applaud Janet Yellen for doing that, the right thing. She stumbled upon the right thing, being partly political. So anyway, guys, I wanted to get that out there. Was I trying to make some other point and I interrupted myself because I think I wanted to talk about that earlier and that just came to my mind right then. But there's just so many different dynamics going on in this economy. And at least, listeners of this show, you guys know that bad things are coming our way. And it's definitely not going to be the fault of deregulation that causes it. It's because of government intervention in the economy. It's because of the Federal Reserve and its funny money. It's artificially low interest rates that have distorted and destroyed savings, which real savings is actually what grows the economy. That's what we've gotten away from. Just like you can't deny gravity, the economy is going to come back down to reality. All these people that are in these businesses that have benefited from this artificial money creation since 2008, yeah, they're going to be declaring bankruptcy. We're going to see huge bankruptcies all across the economy. And imagine all these people that had all these jobs in all these different industries that benefited from all this funny money. When these people can't start making their car and truck payments, they can't pay for their mortgages, they're having a hard time with groceries. So then you have a shrinking economy from the consumer level. And then at that point, and that's going to be the time when it's going to be a good time to buy your car, your new car purchase or new truck purchase, is when people are just trying to get out of them, and because they realize they can't afford them, that we're really not in a recovery, and that things aren't as strong as people at the Federal Reserve are saying, that the government is saying, that Donald Trump is saying. So that's why it's important. Keep your powder dry, have money on the sidelines, have money invested in gold and silver, and be ready, because there's going to be huge opportunities coming our way. So ladies and gentlemen, this is my last episode I'm doing. I'm actually leaving tomorrow. I'm flying out to Miami, heading to Cuba. I know there's some major destruction over there. I think there's like 3 million Cubans without power. So it'd be kind of interesting to see all of that firsthand. Maybe they've cleaned it up more in these last few days. I don't know. I'll have to look up the recent news on that. But yeah, I'll be gone all this next week. But I do have an interview that's coming out next week. So I'm slowly getting back on track here. So I have an interview with John Hunt talking about his latest book that he co-authored with Doug Casey called Drug Lord. That book is freaking awesome. You need to read it. First off, before you read that book, you need to read Speculator. Speculator was an amazing book, and this is the sequel to that with the same character. I'm telling you guys, such a fascinating read, and it's got libertarian philosophy wrapped into just this amazing story. So anyway, guys, that is all I have for you guys today. You can catch up on old episodes. Go to justinmoreshow.com. More is spelled M-O-H-R. You can donate to the show if you want. If you donate over $50, I'll send you my bonus episodes. Or if you want my bonus episodes in another way without donating to the show, click on the link I have on my website. It's a picture of Tom Woods. If you click on that, it takes you to his Liberty Classroom site. You purchase a year membership or you become a lifetime member like I am, you get access to all his courses he's made. I don't know, they have I think he has around 17 courses. There's courses taught by Bob Murphy, economic philosophy, U.S. history, world history. Gosh dang, guys, there's so much information on that site. And by you signing up, you're benefiting from Tom Wood's content. At the same time, I'm sending you my bonus episodes. So it's like a win-win. And you're in the drawing for the silver coin I'll be doing in October. So guys, please go do that. Help yourself out. Help yourself become just more knowledgeable in general. This can help you out with arguments with friends, coworkers, family. Because at this point in time, understanding how everything works, well, at least the best we can. Actually, the more you understand, the more you realize you don't know. You're like, holy crap, there's a lot to know. I mean, I have so much more I've got to learn. Son of a gun. So anyway, guys, please get your learn on. And I will be back. I will talk about what the hell happened in Cuba and just all the crazy stuff. It's going to be an amazing experience, I'm sure. And it's going to be awesome. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here. I will talk with all you guys next week with my interview with John Hunt. And we'll see you then. This is Justin Moore, signing off.